The next national park on the list for me to visit is Death Valley, California. It's a month of April, which is a beautiful time to go out to the desert. The super bloom was last year, so we're not really expecting too much in the way of flowers, but it did rain out there this year, so it should be pretty nice. The road we wanted to take to the park was closed due to the rains, but eventually we made our way. Our first stop was in Panamint Springs to hike up Darwin Falls. We found ourselves in a canyon full of different kinds of wildflowers. There was wildlife everywhere, and there was a creek that was forming this oasis. It wasn't too long, out in the middle of this arid and dry desert, we found water flowing down this creek, creating different waterfalls. After crossing back and forth across the creek about probably 5 different times, we finally started seeing signs that a waterfall was going to be just around the corner. It was an amazing hike there and back because we saw so many things that we didn't really expect to see out in the middle of the desert. From here we could see Death Valley far below, but we were going to have to head back to the hotel for the night and get ready to go to bed and wait for tomorrow. Neither of us really knew what to expect on our first day down at Death Valley, but we both knew that it was going to be a really, really hot day out. We woke up and it was totally scorching outside, and the first destination we were going to was the Mesquite Sand Dunes. It was early and it was already about as hot as we could actually expect it to be, and we really lasted almost no time out there before we ended up having to go out. But it was amazing to see these sand dunes horizon to horizon surrounding the entire valley. In between the sand dunes, there's these what looked like dried up mud pools, but it was actually this really thick, hard limestone. And up the side of each of these dunes was wavy sand. I'd never seen this in real life, so we just spent the whole entire time walking around on top of the dunes. After a while, we moved on to the next stop, and we went down this random dirt road, and we ended up at this creek called Salt Creek. And it had to have been at least 95 degrees, yet there was this creek going down the middle of this desert. And not only was it just a creek, but it was full of fish, the Salt Creek pupfish that were abundant by the thousands. Not too much farther down the road, we ended up finding these dried up mud flats, and within them there was all these different rocks that were placed strategically in all these different places. It reminded me of some of those most memorable pictures that you see from Death Valley, although this wasn't the exact place. Just a bit further down the road, we end up finding this salt flat at the bottom of the valley, and it seems like it goes on forever. At negative 282 feet, Badwater Basin is the lowest point in all of North America. There's a seasonal river that covers about 4,000 square miles that drains into this valley every single winter, and it all eventually evaporates and it leaves this vast salt flat for as far as the eye can see. Now, the reason why it evaporates is because it's one of the hottest places out there you can visit. We really lasted no time at all out there, and as we're walking back, we're looking around, looking at all the things to see, and we noticed that up on the side of the cliff there's this sign that says sea level, and and it looks like it's really far up there. And you look down and down and down and down inside of the cliff, and you get down to the point where you're at in the parking lot, and you realize just how far below sea level you really are. After driving for a while, we ended up taking a 30-mile dirt road through Greenwater Valley. It was green, there was flowers all over the place. We got to a point that was about 4,000 feet. And from here, we approached this beautiful point looking down on Badwater Basin. And it was one of the most beautiful sunsets I've seen in many, many years. One last drive from Dante's View down to Zabriskie Point. We arrived pretty much right as the sun's going down over the mountains off in the distance. With another incredible day behind us, we have one more day to go. Our next adventure was a dirt road that started near the Nevada border and went about 30 miles through Titus Canyon. Right off the bat, we saw huge rock formations that went up about 5,000 or 6,000 feet on either side of us. We spent a good hour driving ridgetop to ridgetop, not knowing what to expect to find on the other side of each one. And we made about 10 miles of driving on a good dirt road until we came to the town of Leadfield, which was an abandoned mining town that was created about 100 years ago. We walked through an abandoned hotel, and I imagined what it was like to be here 100 years ago, looking out one of these windows to this empty desert with nothing in it. The only thing we did find, though, was this grumpy chuckwalla. So we decided to get back in the car and head down the canyon. And before we got too far, we ended up finding this rock that was full of petroglyphs. And the funny thing was, I was driving around looking for bighorn sheep up on the side of the cliffs. And here there's these petroglyphs where people drew bighorn sheep on the rocks 500 years ago. Although there were no bighorn sheep for us to see, there was plenty of very steep cliff faces on either side of the canyon. And as we went farther and farther, the road became steeper and steeper and windier and windier. It was great to be out to the middle of this desert completely by ourselves, and we could see for many miles into the distance and not even see another person. Eventually we got to the canyon we were coming for, and it ended up being this super skinny slot canyon that we were able to drive right down the middle of. The trip took about 3 hours to get to the bottom of the canyon, and from there the next stop was this crater that had exploded right around 1,000 years ago. It happened to be extremely windy when we got there. This was the strongest wind that I've experienced in my recent memory. We couldn't even stay there for long because the sand hitting our face was too painful to even look towards the crater with the wind blowing in our face. We then drove up to Wild Rose, where we saw these charcoal kilns that were built about 100 years ago to burn charcoal for the local silver mines. These were the best preserved kilns actually in all of the United States. And the cool thing was, up to on the distance to our right was this peak that was still covered in snow. We then drove to a place called Aquaberry Point, where we got there pretty much in time to watch the sunset go down again on our third day of our trip. Although there was plenty of other tourists at the park, the thing I liked most about Death Valley was that it wasn't hard at all to be completely by yourself in the middle of the desert.